London, 1888. A city that ruled a third of the planet, the greatest empire in human history, is brought to its knees by a ghost. 5 women, 5 murders, all in 1 square mile of fog. And the killer? He walked away forever. 137 years later, we still don't know his name. But here's the thing nobody tells you. The police had names. They had real, living suspects. They just couldn't prove it. Today, I'm going to show you the 5 men who could have been Jack the Ripper. And by the end, one of them is going to haunt you. First, you need to understand where this happened. Whitechapel, 1888, the poorest, most overcrowded corner of London. Thousands crammed into rotting tenements. 250,000 people in 1 square mile. And at the very bottom of that heap, the women of the streets. Desperate, vulnerable, invisible. Between August and November of 1888, someone started hunting them. The first victim, Mary Ann Nichols, stabbed in the throat, then the abdomen. When the police found her, they realized something that made even hardened detectives sick. The killer didn't just murder her. He took his time. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a man who was comfortable in the dark. And here's what makes this case different from every other unsolved murder in history. The newspapers. They turned a brutal killer into a legend. They gave him the name Jack the Ripper. And they turned the most terrifying man in Britain into a household name. That's when the suspects started pouring in. Our first suspect is the one the police actually chased across the Atlantic. Francis Tumblety, a flamboyant, boastful quack doctor from America, one of the most famous medical frauds of his era. He claimed to have personally treated Abraham Lincoln. He owned a collection of preserved wombs and other organs in glass jars, which he liked to show off. Now, on the night of the final murder, Tumblety was in the area. He was questioned by police and then, remarkably, released. Days later, he skipped bail and fled to France, then back to America, at the exact moment the murders stopped. The lead investigator on the case, Inspector Andrews, reportedly told a colleague, "I think I know who the Ripper is. He's in New York." Tumblety died in 1903. Never charged, never tried, never explained. A doctor with a hatred of women, a display cabinet of organs, and a disappearing act the day the killings ended. Coincidence? Or the one that got away? Suspect number 2 is the one science got excited about. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-Jewish immigrant working as a barber in Whitechapel, a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. He was known to the police. He was even named by a key witness as a man who hated women with an irrational, murderous rage. Kosminski was committed to an asylum in 1891, and he stayed there until his death in 1919. But here's why he's the DNA suspect. In 2014, a researcher claimed to have matched a DNA sample from a shawl found near the 4th victim, Catherine Eddowes, to Kosminski's descendants. The headlines screamed, "Jack the Ripper identified." Except the scientific community tore it apart. The shawl's chain of custody was shaky. The DNA testing was disputed, and historians pointed out the shawl's owner was a police officer who could have contaminated it decades later. So was Kosminski the Ripper. The DNA says maybe. The science says prove it. Now we meet the suspect the police themselves believed most, and the one who died before anyone could arrest him. Montague John Druitt, a respected barrister, a cricket player, a teacher. On the surface, a gentleman. But underneath Druitt was a man falling apart. Here's the timeline that haunts this case. The final Ripper murder, Mary Kelly, the most brutal of all, happened on November 9th, 1888. The killings stopped that day. And on December 1st, 3 weeks later, Druitt's body was pulled from the River Thames. Weights in his pockets. He'd drowned himself. His own family believed he'd killed himself because he feared he was going mad. Mad enough to do something terrible. And here's the kicker. One of the top officers on the case, Inspector McNacton, wrote that he believed Druitt was the Ripper, and that his suicide was why the murders stopped. A suspect who took his secret to the bottom of the Thames. The man the police blamed, but could never prove. Suspect 4 brings us the strangest artifact in true crime history. James Maybrick, a successful cotton merchant from Liverpool, married, respected, and according to one controversial diary, the Ripper himself. In 1992, a man walked into a publishing house claiming he'd found a diary written by Maybrick in which he confessed to the murders, in Maybrick's own hand, dated 1889. Page after page of chilling detail. But hold on, remember what I said about evidence? The diary's handwriting was disputed. Experts said the ink was modern. The 1904 date on the watch found with it didn't match. The entire thing was branded, by most historians, an elaborate hoax. And yet, it sold millions of copies. It made Maybrick a household name. And to this day, people still argue it's real. So here's the question you can't escape. Is the diary a genuine confession of a killer, or the most successful hoax in history? And which is worse, that we might never know, or that a hoaxer fooled us all? And now, the suspect that would have shaken the British Empire to its core, Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria, second in line to the throne, the man who could have been King of England. The theory goes like this. The prince, a known visitor to the darker corners of London, supposedly fathered a child with a common woman and had a secret affair with a man. When the Ripper murders began, the theory claims the victims were women who knew about it, and the royal family, desperate to protect the crown, had the murders covered up. One senior officer, Sir Robert Anderson, even hinted that the Ripper's identity was protected, that the man was never prosecuted because the establishment wouldn't allow it. Now, was it true? Almost certainly not. Historians have demolished the prince's alibi and the conspiracy's logic. But here's the thing that matters. It could have been true, and the people in power made sure we'd never know for sure. That single idea, that the truth was deliberately buried, is why Jack the Ripper has haunted us for 137 years. So, which one was it? The doctor, the barber, the barrister, the merchant, the prince? Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. All of them. None of them. We will never know. That's the horror of Jack the Ripper. It's not the violence, it's the uncertainty. A killer who moved through the fog of the greatest city on earth, took 5 lives, and vanished, leaving only guesses behind him. Every suspect has a story. Every suspect has a hole in the case. And that's why, 137 years later, we're still arguing. Maybe he was a nobody. Maybe he was royalty. Maybe, and this is the one that keeps historians up at night, he was just a man who was very, very good at not being caught. If you've made it this far, thank you. The people who stay to the end are the ones who care about the truth, not just the headlines. So let me ask you something. Out of these 5 suspects, who do you think it was? Drop your pick in the comments. Trust me, we're going to argue about it. And if you want to unlock more of history's darkest unsolved mysteries, subscribe. The next case is even stranger. I'll see you there.